Okay, we're continuing with quotes from the Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers, alphabetical order. The next one is Clement Clark Moore, and he just wrote, the great poem song, "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse." Okay, the next one, Raymond Moore, educator. He said, "There is not one replicated study that suggests little children should be in school at 5 or 6 years of age. Not even one." Yeah, all this stuff about getting the kids into school at a young age, that's so they can get the women into the workforce, and more importantly, so they can get the children away from the parents and start corrupting them, turning them against God, turning them against their parents, making them stupid. It's not by accident. All this stuff is done to make the kids stupid. What they want is, people to be like conformist farm animals. Okay. There is not one replicated study that even suggests that a normal child should be in kindergarten. The home is the best garden for the child, the average home. And the time has come when we should be strengthening home instead of taking children out earlier. Yeah, I agree. It's better for the mothers to be home with the kids. The kids do better, much better. People say, "Oh, well, you learn social skills at school." Pfft, you don't learn bad social skills. You learn good social skills at home. You behave yourself in front of your parents and your cousins and your aunts and uncles. At school, you learn how to be mischievous. Okay, Raymond Moore continues. The recipe for genius, homeschooling. More of family and less of school. More of parents and less of peers. More creative freedom and less formal lessons. Yep. When you look at the history of geniuses, you'll see most of them are homeschooled as much as possible. And most of them had a prolonged phase of loneliness in their childhood or their early youth where they had nothing to do but read or study a lot. And that's actually good for a person intellectually. It's not fun, but it's good for them. Okay, the earlier you institutionalize your child, meaning put them into a public school, the earlier they will institutionalize you in a nursing home. Okay, next one is Thomas More, St. Thomas More, the author of the book Utopia, the one who refused to give Henry VIII permission to get a divorce, and that's why Henry VIII bumped him off, okay? Okay, Thomas More was a contemporary of Martin Luther, and he criticized Martin Luther quite harshly. He was a medieval Catholic, and the Utopia book was a little bit of a play on Plato's Republic in a way he thought to improve it. The play, you can see the movie and whatnot, A Man for All Seasons by Robert Bolt, was about the life of Thomas More. I remember watching that when I was a kid on TV. Thomas More was married and he had some kids. He was friends with Erasmus, and he was a big fan of reading the classics. Thomas More promoted freedom, and this put him into conflict also with Henry VIII. And he kind of reminds me a little bit of like Boethius, sort of the last, multilingual educated of the Romans, who was then executed by a barbarian king like Henry VIII in a sense. And that's why I also think the Anglican Church is kind of a joke. Okay, the founder was Henry VIII, who bumped off, like two of his wives. And Thomas More's Utopia was a little bit like a Roman Catholic monastery. So here's a quote from Thomas More. "Occupy your minds with good thoughts, or the enemy will fill them with bad ones. One of the greatest problems of our time is that many are schooled, but few are educated. I die the king's faithful servant, but God's first. If honor were profitable, everyone would be honorable." That's a good one right there. Yeah, if it was profitable to tell you the truth, medical system would be better, the health influencers for nutrition and whatnot would be a lot better. But the reality, sadly, is it's a lot more profitable to lie, cheat, steal, and abuse people. Like Henry VIII, once he made the Anglican Church, he just ripped off all the Catholic monasteries, okay, stole all their stuff. So that was a lot of money, a lot of land for him, okay. Okay, we do another guy named Moore. This one's spelled Moore, the Irish songwriter. And he just wrote two great Irish songs. "The Minstrel Boy to the War is Gone." I'll actually put these in the links below. "The Minstrel Boy to the War is Gone." The other one is "Oft in the Stilly Night." They're both great Irish songs. Next is Albert Moravia, novelist. He said, "Good novelists are monotonous like composers. They keep trying to perfect the one problem they were born to understand." And that sort of reminds me of the idea of verisimilitude, meaning that you maintain a sense of reality in the book, that it sticks to the same theme with the same tone. And the great writers, they do that. You feel Dostoevsky pushes that through his book. You feel Victor Hugo pushes that tone all the way through the book from start to finish. and they don't break out of that. Whereas me personally, I could never be a novelist because I always want to tell a joke or something. It's hard for me to stay in form, for 300, 400 pages like a novel typically does. Michael Crichton was great at that, like building suspense with Jurassic Park. The stakes keep going higher, the danger keeps going higher. Okay, next quote by Moravia, the novelist. He says, "Every true writer is like a bird. He repeats the same song, the same theme all his life." Okay, well, there's some truth in that. The really great ones can change the tune quite a bit from one book to the next. Like Dostoevsky, Notes from the Underground is quite different than Brothers Karamazov. All right, here's a good line, though. He says, "The novel as we knew it in the 19th century, the 1800s, was killed off by Proust and Joyce." I think Proust and Joyce both suck, okay? James Joyce, you ever try reading his book Ulysses? It's like impossible to read. It's totally obnoxious. And, they try to pretend that all these lost generation writers are so great. I don't think they were. I think they mostly kind of were, okay. But, what is F. Scott Fitzgerald? Yeah, he's got some smooth lines here and there, Great Gatsby, but there's nothing in that book that changes how I think or how I approach life. There's, Ernest Hemingway. Yeah, I like him. He was a brave, heroic guy, but he got messed up and became an alcoholic. And he was a Christian and a Catholic, but he kept it kind of quiet. He wasn't overtly Christian that much in his writings, a little bit, but yeah, he's entertaining. Yeah, he has a good style, but they don't shape my life. And then, Sylvia Plath and Virginia Woolf are two maniacs who keep trying to kill themselves, and finally they did. What have they got to say to me? What does James Joyce, a total alcoholic, have to say to me? Nothing, okay? So I think they're totally overrated. All right. He says, "I don't think it's possible to write a good novel about a negative personality." That would be the idea of naturalism. So Ayn Rand pretty much differentiated the two big categories in novels. One is what she would consider herself, a romantic realist, like Victor Hugo, Fyodor Dostoevsky, meaning that tells a true story in a real sense, but the protagonist is going to be heroic, okay, and is going to have volition, the ability to shape their fate, versus in a naturalistic novel, so to speak, it's the idea that there's nothing you can do, it's all just fate. And quite often the lead character is some miserable, pathetic scumbag. And who wants to read about that? Okay, Alberto Moravia continues, "The rate of literacy to illiteracy is constant, but nowadays the illiterates can read." Yeah, people go to school, they learn how to read, but most of them don't continue to read. But part of that's intentionally trained into them by giving them such miserable books you force them to read the first year, freshman year of high school, ninth grade. Those books are terrible. Great Expectations, Mockingbird, Catcher in the Rye, Julius Caesar. They're simply not ready for those books, and it makes them miserable. Great Expectations is the worst Charles Dickens book ever by far. Okay, the less one notices happiness, the greater it is. And I'd say that's true. It's like sometimes my girlfriend will keep asking me, "Are you happy? Are you happy?" And I'm like, shut up. Don't ask me that. It's like, number one, are you asking me if I'm happy? Are you trying to say that you please me, so you want me to give you more money or do you a favor or something? Or are you trying to get me to think about my life, and the more I think about my life, then I'll be less happy? I was happy until you started getting me to think about it, so stop asking me that. Anyways, I hope you found that helpful.